If you're thinking you don't have time to watch this, that is a sign that you really do need to watch it. Because what do you think of the state of leadership in the world right now? And would you like to change it? If you said yes, this session is for you. Stay on because in the next 30 minutes, you will find out how you can be part of making that happen. But let me introduce you first to Ian Hatton. Ian Hatton, also known as Morpheus, has influenced thousands of leaders from 107 countries and counting across cultures and industries. He is the author of Lead Like Morpheus and Egg-Based Leadership, the journal for liberating leaders. He's a keynote speaker and facilitator and the founder of Totally Morpheus. In 2022, the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa inducted him into its Educators Hall of Fame for his contributions to the field of leadership. Today, you will meet Ian and experience his authentic and heartfelt delivery. But that draws on vast experience as a leader and a trainer in the IT sector, the corporate world, professional and community organizations. Members of his influential audiences have called his sessions life-changing. And half an hour from now, you might too. Ian Hatton's mission is to change the face of leadership in the world as we know it. You are about to discover a tool that you can use to do the same. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Marie. That sounds so grand. And it's all kind of true, but it feels a little humbling to hear it out of your voice. So, let me introduce you to Marie Le Roux. Marie Le Roux has lived many lives. Today, you will not hear how a genie saved her skin in the Arabian empty quarter desert, or how she got stranded on a small island off the coast of Thailand, or spent a rainy night on a cliff overhanging the Indian Ocean. But you will get the benefit of the expertise and experience she gained in researching professional development with a top-ranking UK university and implementing these findings for organizations from Oman to Malaysia to New Zealand and now the world online. Here at Totally Morpheus, Marie is our communication lead responsible for our content, online programs, and the groundbreaking research instrument you will discover today. She is also usually the one responsible when we run out of green tea or peanut butter.
Guilty as charged, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ian. So we're going to be discovering a game-changing tool that we believe can change the world. But if you're watching this, why should you care? Well, the tool we'll introduce to you has massive benefits for three specific groups of people. And so, these three groups who benefit from what we are doing today work at three levels. And the first level is individual leaders and their teams.
One of the things I love to tell individuals is that if you don't know where you are, how can you plot the path to where you want to be? And that is why this tool is so critical. If we do not understand, if I don't look in the mirror, I can't see how I need to change my hairstyle or whatever it is. I need to understand where I'm at so that I can get to where I want to be. And that's really what this is. It allows individuals to understand how they're leading, what they're doing, where they're at, what state of leadership they're in, and it gives them tools to change that state if they don't like what they see, or to maintain that state if they do.
That's really fascinating that leaders can then go and find out where they're at with a whole fresh perspective. And the perspective that this tool gives them is completely fresh, really, really a new way of looking at things that encompasses all the existing ways of looking at leadership, but gives something really accessible. And you also say there are tools for leadership growth, and those include not only using this tool, which is the Global State of Leadership Survey, but also then getting their instant report and a micro-learning pathway. Could you tell us a bit more about that micro-learning pathway and how they can use it and benefit?
Whatever their result, there is a learning pathway that will help them to grow. And it's very, very simple 3 minutes a day for 15 days. And we have seen transformation truly taking place over those 15 days.
So that means the individual benefits when they take this survey as a leader, as an individual, and when they are growing as a leader, immediately there's a ripple effect on the people around them, both at work and in their communities, their families, their relationships, and life. That's really exciting. So that's the individual benefit, layer one. Is there anything else about that we should know, Ian?
I just think very simply that some of the feedback we're getting from people who've completed their pathway is that it didn't only impact their leadership at the office, but it actually impacted their communities and beyond. So we're going to talk more about that later on.
So that is a really massive benefit that anyone can have by using this Global State of Leadership survey in their work and in their life beyond that. But there's also a benefit to the next layer, and that layer is organizations, whether it's a small business, a big corporate, or even a governmental organization, a nonprofit, or even just a community or professional organization. How do they benefit when their individual leaders take the Global State of Leadership assessment?
Well, of course, as each individual grows as a leader, it impacts the whole organization. And especially when they take ownership of plotting that path to where they want to be. We've seen quite dramatic shifts in organizations which have impacted the organizational culture, it's impacted the profitability of the organization and the whole state of leadership and the impact of the leaders in the organization simply by doing the individual product which is available at no cost. There are benefits beyond that which can be explored, but really it's available just by doing the survey and following the pathways and taking their instant report and running with it.
That's great to know. So individuals are benefiting, organizations are benefiting, and what you're saying is at this point, no money has changed hands. Everybody has access to this incredible resource without having to pay for anything. That's very, very good to know. And that is also because there is an important social benefit to all of this. And that third layer is really society at large, the public, and everybody else who's looking for a better state of leadership. That comes through the survey report that's coming soon. How will people benefit from those results?
So just knowing what the state is, we're in a stage in our world where everybody's saying there's something wrong, something needs to shift in leadership. And a lot of people are saying that they're not happy with the current state of leadership in the world. But what do you do about that if you haven't got the actual data? And so having the data on that state of leadership can be quite transformational because we'll understand where the real issues are. For example, we understand at the moment that hope is an issue in the world, trust is an issue in the world. But what's the data on leadership and its impact on those things? Let's get that message out so that people can actually start to ask for better leadership and know what they specifically are asking for.
That knowing what they are asking for when we're wanting better leadership is really a powerful question to ask, right? Because we can all feel that something's wrong. But if you asked me to fix it on my own, I probably wouldn't be quite sure, and I don't think many of us would, although we all have the temptation to complain from time to time. So this really helps us to see what are the measurable things that research and experience over time has shown makes a concrete difference, a measurable difference to the way that people lead. In your work, Ian, with thousands of leaders around the world at every level, from blue chip companies all the way down to grassroots community organizations, you have seen that there are certain patterns that emerge. What you have created here in this survey is really a way of bringing all of that research together in a way that people can take action on. They don't have to go spend years studying or training or a massive time in mentorships. They can actually get the key principles that they need right now so they can grow immediately as a leader. And all of that has had an incredible impact on the people you've worked with. You're going to be sharing with us later how a client experienced that with work among their people that dramatically changed how the individual leaders work, how they collaborate as a team, and it even impacted their bottom line. So this is a profitable endeavor for anybody who thinks this is the touchy-feely stuff. This is a moneymaker. It both balances the people side and the profit side. But how did it all begin?
So I've been doing leadership development work now for 22 years after leaving a corporate IT marketing role. And one of the things that I keep getting asked, whether we're talking to a senior executive, whether we're talking to a learning and development manager, or whether we're even talking to the individual, is how do we know whether the leadership development work is actually working? And for us, how do we know how to improve leadership development tools if we don't have a way of measuring a kind of a before and an after picture? That led to the development of the EG3 Leadership Survey. And that survey allows us to have a measurable before and after picture of the state of leadership, not related to talent or wiring, but the actual current state of leadership that can change over time based on implementing great leadership.
Ian, this is really interesting that you speak about a current state because that tells me we're not stuck with it. We can grow, we can develop, and maybe we even have our ups and downs. But the current leadership state is actually a key to unlocking this leadership growth that you share with everybody who's willing to take the journey. Would you like to tell us about this current leadership state? Because it sounds like that's your first dimension.
Yes, very much. So it is something that can vary. It is something we do indeed have our ups and downs and our good days and bad days. But what if we could work towards a place where we are having more and more good days and less bad days? What if we could work to a place where the external pressures of results and people actually have less of a negative impact on the way that we lead? And by understanding our state of leadership, we can actually start to implement the kind of growth that'll get us to a place of more sound, wise, less temperamental leadership that we can truly bring our passion to and live out the influence we want to bring onto the world.
So, can you give us a little bit of a snapshot there? Because you have three different current leadership states.
Yes, indeed. So the first two are kind of opposite ends of a spectrum, but both of them are probably not where we want to be, but we have a lot of empathy for why people are there. And the very first one we're going to talk about is what we call the survivor state. These are people with a real heart for their team members. They are leaders who want to make a difference. They are there. They're committed. However, it's not in a long-term sustainable. And so they will keep helping their people to the point where their people are not taking full ownership or full responsibility. And we've seen many, many leaders who are struggling, and then their whole team is in a similar sort of survivor state. So we call that the survivor state. It is very people-oriented, which is great, but it's not done in a sustainable way. So that's the first of the three leadership states. The second leadership state is what we call the striver state. This is the try harder leader, sometimes the command and control leader, but this is a leader who's very, very results focused. And of course, leadership should be making an impact, so we should get results. However, it's unsustainable from a people perspective because we are in that striver state, and I've been there. In that striver state, we are not actually paying attention to the impact of our style of leadership on our people. And it's going to impact things like engagement or even staff turnover. And that's not sustainable. It could even result in burnout.
So it sounds like at the one end of the spectrum, we have survivor leadership, which is not sustainable because it's giving too much attention to the people. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have striver leadership, which is not sustainable because it's neglecting the people, paying attention to the profits at the cost of the people. Are you speaking about a golden mid, kind of a midway for the third state?
Well, one of the things I constantly hear from leaders is it's tough. And there's so many pressures. And if I'm trying to get the people results and the profit results, and a midpoint is almost just more pressure. Now I've got to be juggling, you know. So what if there was a third alternative that wasn't the midpoint? And that third alternative we call the thriver leadership state. This is where I am centered and grounded and growing myself and making myself my number one job to the point where I now have capacity to strategically and wisely deal with the people pressures and the results pressures. But I'm doing it with a more of a long-term sustainable mindset because I've built in the capacity to lead and to thrive in the way that I lead, which can then raise up my people to thrive in the way that they perform their tasks.
That's quite inspiring. So it sounds like if we can have more people moving from survivor and striver state into a current state of thriving more often, then we're already doing a great deal about the global state of leadership.
Exactly. And, you know, this is my personal experience as well. When I was in the corporate world, when I was really focused on my people, often the results suffered. When I was really focused on the results, the people suffered, trust was broken down. And it was only a turning point in my life where I realized, hang on, have I learned to lead myself yet? And how can I try and lead others if I don't know how to lead myself? And that is the thriver capacity that I started to build. And I've seen so many great leaders doing as well.
And you have got data to prove this, which is really exciting. So, to fill in a little bit of the story here, from going from this leadership survey that was the egg three, you have been using this with many different people. You used it with clients that you actually worked with, but you were making it available to anybody who was interested. And so what emerged was some incredible data. And it emerged across three dimensions. The first being this current leadership state of the survivor, striver, and thriver from a very simple 24 question survey, right? And those 24 questions give you all of that data. But then we started seeing amazing things happen because the data also emerged in two other dimensions from the same questions. And we also noticed that when people made use of these pathways that you speak about, they could actually have a big transformation. Show us some statistics, Ian. What does this actually look like in practice?
So I'm going to start with this. This is showing the three states that I've just described, the survivor, striver, and thriver state. And this is the data that we have collected so far, where 46% of all leaders surveyed so far are sitting in a survivor state, 18% in a striver state, and 36% in a thriver state. So about a third are actually thriving. And we also think this is slightly skewed because some of these people had already done a whole lot of work. We think that the true picture may actually be worse than this. We also picked up that certain industries seem to push people in a direction. And we recently worked with one industry where Striver came up strongest as part of that industry. And so the reason we want to do this global state of leadership survey is to get more data so we can actually understand this picture even better. But looking at this data already, it's quite clear that with only a third of the leaders actually thriving, that there is work to be done. And then what we did was we did some work with a very specific organization that had two levels of leadership team. And this is their leadership state before doing their pathways. So this is the client state of leadership before they had done their leadership pathway. And they had 47% of their leaders in survivor state, very similar to the global average, 33 in thriver, again, very similar to the global average, and 20 in striver, again, very similar to the global average. So this is quite interesting that it's a micro of that thing. Mm-hmm. They'd done some workshops and things, but nothing had changed. Then they did the micro learning pathways. And they then, within a month of completing that, reassessed all of their leaders. And this is what they discovered. They had gone down to 0% in a survivor state, only 17% in a striver state, and 83% of the leaders were now thriving. And not just thriving, but thriving. You know, they were quite high up in this chart, as you can see. And this was the company where they said, we're starting to see a shift in the culture. We're starting to see a shift in profitability. They started to see, they had their best year ever when they did this. And what was also interesting is that they found that the leaders in a thriver state were more open to further learning than when they were in a survivor state. And that makes sense, doesn't it? That in a survivor state, we kind of go, how do I even get through today? Forget about trying to learn something new. But you get to a thriver state, and now suddenly they're saying, oh, how do we improve our team leadership? How do we improve the impact each leader is making? And they're all on board to do that because the thriver state makes that more accessible and more manageable.
That is actually a really powerful insight, Ian, because what you're saying is they have made use of this free tool, the instant reports, and then the pathways, and they experienced this transformation. And now suddenly people who were reluctant to learn are keen to learn. And I wonder how many organizations spend literally millions on developing their staff, developing their leaders, but they cannot benefit from that because the people are in this survivor state or striver state, and it's like they cannot absorb what they're learning. This very costly, valuable personal employee development, leadership development material that they're receiving is lost. And the difference that it can make to first take just a simple survey like this and move forward to get value from anything else that they do later. And all of that literally at no cost to them up until that point where the leaders are ready to move forward. Wow.
Well, actually, there is a cost, and the cost is time, and the cost is the willingness to look in the mirror. And not all leaders are there yet. So, but the cost financially, yeah, it's all available for them for free.
It's interesting that you mentioned the time, because the idea of being time poor, I had never even heard words like that, but so many people in especially organizations, human resource professionals are speaking of how time poor everybody across the organization is. And this often applies even more to leaders. It's interesting to see that thriving leaders manage to overcome that time poverty, even though they probably have more responsibility than everybody else. But yes, finding that small investment of time. And yet, this Global State of Leadership survey takes probably no more than 20 minutes to complete. And the pathways are basically a 3-minute process over 15 days. I think everybody has that total of 1 hour to invest in their growth, especially if you see what the benefits can be. Amazing.
And you're 100% right. The most time poor of all are leaders in a survivor or striver state, because everything is about the pressure of this and the pressure of that. Whereas the thriver state is a state of capacity. which I guess in a way is the opposite of time poverty.
We're looking at these dots on the screen, and of course, they're data points. And in any survey, we're going to see what different data looks like. But nobody's name or face or organization is on there. You go to great lengths to protect the privacy of each member taking the survey. And I believe you mentioned earlier that if an individual leader takes that survey, their results are private to them only, right? It's not shared with anyone, it's stored on a secure server, and even their employers and HR managers and these people will not see the individual result.
So for me, I am incredibly strict about this. Nobody sees the individual data. It's not discussed with leaders. It's not discussed with HR or learning and development or anything like that. We simply give the dots, as you can see on this, and that we could show at a higher level. And that's what we want to build in this Global State of Leadership survey. What are the statistics? How is it changing? And it's completely anonymous to the individual, except their personal result, so that they can do something with it and they can follow their pathway.
So the individual sees their result, but nobody else does. And that also really is non-threatening. It's funny that you mentioned the idea of right answers, because when people try to give right answers, that actually also indicates their current state of leadership, which is
It
really a
does indeed.
fascinating twist. But Ian, you
It
spoke
is.
about different dimensions, and when a
Yes.
person takes the Global State of Leadership survey, they get their first dimension, this current leadership state result, and they get the tools to move forward. But there are other dimensions with additional leadership focus areas and have statistics for that as well. Would you like to share those with us?
Yes, indeed. So the second dimension we actually call leadership values. And I'm going to show that in a moment. But before I do, I just want to say that these leadership values are things that I have found make a tremendous difference in the way we lead people. And I truly believe leadership is about leading people. So just like there's survivor, striver, and thriver in the first dimension, there are three leadership values, and they're in a very specific sequence. And those three leadership values are connection, freedom, and impact. And as you can see, this is our data so far that we have from hundreds of leaders, and they're all kind of not that high. The levels of connection, the levels of freedom, the levels of impact are quite limited.
Below
And again,
50%.
this is good data, all below 50%, well below 50%. Yeah.
Really quite a shocker if those are the requirements for leading well.
Mm,
And
mm,
they're a little bit more on almost the human side of this. Now, when it comes to the MBA stuff, what you will go and learn at leadership school or business school, there are also the domains of leadership. And that is your third dimension, the current leadership
mm.
domains. And let's see what those look like. How are we doing there as a planet?
Exactly. And wouldn't we love some more data on that? You know, I said already that thriver leaders lead themselves first. And so we have these four domains of leadership where we have leading self, leading others, leading teams, and leading transformation. And look at the self leadership score. Incredibly low. People are not learning to lead themselves first. And then we kind of wonder, why are we not having all the impact we want to have? Why are we not seeing it? Because great leadership always starts with self. And then leading others, leading individuals. Now, we have a lot of focus of that in our businesses and in our society, that we want people to have clear goals, but we also want them to be developing the individual. And again, you can see this is below a
Mm.
50% score on average across hundreds of leaders surveyed so far. And then the leading teams is, how do we build a team spirit, a team where we can collaborate, where we can leverage each other's strengths, where we can have a high performance and high morale in a teaming context. And again, look at that score. It's quite low. And then finally, leading transformation. This is where we are building our culture and our values, and we are doing great change leadership and leaving a longer term, almost legacy impact. And again, nowhere near where we would like it to be in society. This is the data we have so far, and it's a bit shocking.
So this takes me aback because when we looked at your little triangle with the thrivers at the top, it looked like, hey, a lot of leaders are thriving, but these are those same people. And on the leadership values, basically, if this was school, that's a fail. And the leadership values are low. We
Oh,
have these current leadership domains, and that is shockingly low. And leading self, which is presumably where we start, is the lowest. Shocker.
it is shocking, and yes, some of the others are slightly higher, but they're unsustainable until the leading self changes. Because
Right.
as we do the leading self, what we'll start to see is we'll start to see these values going up. And as those values go up, we're having a greater and greater impact, which means we'll start to see the leading other scores go higher, the leading team scores are higher,
Mm.
and the leading transformation scores go higher. So this is where we're at now. And yet, so fascinating that client case study that I showed you a few slides ago, they realized that leading teams was actually their lowest score. But now that they were in a thriver state, they said, let's do something about it. Let's take on teams leadership skills. Let's build a teaming culture in our organization. And already we're starting to see the shift and the impact of that as well.
There really are results, and there's a way to make an impact. And so that is the fruit of the Global State of Leadership Survey. And the reason why we really want to make this available to everybody is so that each person can have the option of that benefit. If you are an individual, whether you're a leader at work or a leader at home, a leader in your community, or an aspiring leader, maybe somebody who has a dream of really making an impact, these very, very simple tools that are completely free can help you to take that next step in growing as a leader. So there's an individual benefit. If you are in an organization and you would like to see the leaders in your organization go and grow and get to that point where they can actually benefit from further growth, because we saw until they get to Thriver, they can't really absorb further growth, then this is a wonderful way to encourage everybody in your world, everybody in your workplace, everybody in your organization to go and take this survey. And if you are simply part of this humanity, the planet that we live on, well, the benefit is coming in when we share this survey and we get more data, all of that data will contribute to the Global State of Leadership Report that is slated for November 2026, when we'll bring everything together and see where are people before and after their 15 days of leadership development through these very simple tools that go from the Global State of Leadership survey to the instant report to the personalized liberation pathways that allow you to do 15 little days of 3-minute micro learning sections. And let's see what the impact of that is. If you have been dissatisfied with the state of leadership in the world, if you feel committed to making it better, the Global State of Leadership Survey is your tool to make that happen. Go take it, go share it, and go and make some noise so that more people can benefit from this. What if we really can change our world? Ian, before we go, what is your parting shot?
So for me, I left my world of IT and Microsoft behind some 24 years ago because I wanted to make a difference in the world. And 9 years later, I realized I had failed. I had really, really failed because even though I'd learned a ton of skills and I was training leaders and doing all sorts of things, I was not having the impact I wanted to have. I was also failing at home, in my business, and beyond in society in so many ways. And I discovered that there was a better way to lead. And there was something that I needed to do on my inner journey. And that led to me becoming more of a thriver leader. And the incredible thing is, without changing my techniques, I started to have a bigger impact. People were starting to report back that it was changing marriages and society and their teams and their businesses and their profitability and all of the things that we were really wishing for and hoping for. And that has sort of led me to go, surely others can benefit from that. And I'm not saying everybody should do what I did. I'm just simply saying, wouldn't it be good to understand where you are and then to plot a path for your maximum impact in your time on earth? Leaders sometimes tell me, oh, I'm not here to leave a legacy. And then I say, oh, do you want to leave the world the way you found it? Do you want to hand over to your children the way you was handed over to you? And they go, no, 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 no. And I say, well, that's what this is all about.
And it's amazing to see that there's actually data to show that it makes a difference. So if you're still at this point watching the video, what are you still doing here? Go take the survey already and go pass it on. But if you're still here because you're thinking, that is exactly what I've been looking for, not just for myself, but to go and make a difference in the world. Maybe we can help you to do that. If you're feeling that call, send us an email at connect@totallymorpheus.com and let's talk about how we can set you up, equip you to go and change the world. Let's go change the world.
Let's go change the world.